What are the challenges with scaling Kanban, large-scale Kanban? Let's pick up the first question here, and we're going to be talking about what are the challenges with large-scale Kanban. And just to frame the question a little bit more, many Kanban implementations struggle with scaling across large teams and projects. So can you please share some of the biggest challenges you've faced in implementing Kanban at scale where you work?
Sure. So the number one challenge with implementing Kanban anywhere, I believe, is that this is not something that will happen over a day. It requires time. It's based on the evolutionary change approach. So we are introducing small improvements one at a time, and through time, we are getting better and better and better. So as the Scrum is often or is just a framework to develop products, Kanban is not a framework. It's more like a method how we can improve. So it's the way for constant improvement. And we can use Kanban to actually improve Scrum framework, but we can also use Kanban to improve other stuff.
Yeah.
And when we are talking about the big scale, the biggest challenge with this requirement that we need a long time to see the results is that when we have a lot of teams, we should actually not do everything at once. What I did in our setup and what I would recommend for others to do is just to start with one team and start improving there. And when over time you will see first results and you will see first improvements, then it's much easier to also convince the management or to build interest in other teams to go the same way. So just basically lead by the example. Choose one team that can improve and show others that it is possible to improve that way.
So hold on. Big surprise here. You're saying approach it in an agile way, in an incremental way. This is great, right? Because it sounds really reasonable, but a lot of organizations struggle with that because it's all about big bang, lots of changes happening to everybody all in one go. But actually, let's be sensible here. Let's choose a group where we might have an experiment, run it with them, get some results, and then get buy-in, and then build incrementally on that. Sounds very good.
Yeah.
Can you give an example of a particularly challenging situation?
Sometimes it's not possible to wait. Sometimes the change needs to happen very quickly. Like, for example, we can have some structural changes, organizational changes on the company level. And this is something that also happened in our setup in KMD Elements. And we had a smaller product merged with ours at some point in time. And, there was no time for evolutionary change there because the change had to happen like from next month. Yeah. So sometimes it's not possible. And then you always need to remember that you always need to look for the right tools for the right situation. So, whenever you are into improving and having better results and you can afford some time to achieve that, then Kanban practices will be a perfect way to do so. However, if you don't have the time, then it will be impossible because, as you mentioned before, when we are doing this big transition, like many agile transformations used to happen before, it's a big change that is actually targeting people's identity, their job titles. They are afraid. There is a lot of negative emotions involved in this change. So it is very hard. And we all know that from the traditional change management. So if we know that agile values and agile approach is a little bit different, then we should, of course, whenever it is possible, try to do it in the more humane way. We can talk entire hour about the challenges because as the theory of constraints says, there is always something challenging, right? You tackle one problem and then appears another one. So there is always something. And I believe that the other side of what might be difficult in such Kanban adoptions is that, for example, what happened to our first team which used Kanban. Because the first team that did it was the platform team, actually, and they left Scrum approach due to changing requirements all the time. They adopted Kanban practices, created Kanban board that was visualizing their system. They were using Kanban metrics, and they improved to the way that the predictability and lead times and lead time distribution was good enough that they stopped improving. And right now, whenever I'm meeting with them once a month on the flow review to see how is the workflow going and are we still, in line with what are the expectations towards these teams, we can see that, well, everything is fine, nothing to improve. And on the one hand, it's, well, that's nice. It's a good thing that we are predictable, that we can keep it that way no matter how the environment changes. And we had a lot of changes outside of the team during that time. And the team was more or less still predictable with the results. However, is it still Kanban if we stopped improving? I wouldn't say so.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about Kanban, the first thing that comes to mind is Kaizen, right?
Yes, exactly. You never stop improving.
Yeah, incremental improvements. So it's interesting. What does it become then without that sort of, without the Kaizen? Does it just become a set of columns where you're moving your work?
Well, I guess it's just a work management then.
Okay, yeah, a work
management way. Like you have some sort of process, you visualize it, measure it, and that's it, because you don't improve it very much.
and then I guess, if we think about that, so that's Kanban, but then how do you scale it? How do you scale it in an organization?
Okay, so you can scale Kanban in different not a project, but directions, in different directions. So, for example, you can scale Kanban across other teams. So you have one team, and then another team will be using Kanban, another, and another, and another. And they are, for example, on the same level in the product development setup.
We're talking about like a network rather than
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. And this is like one way to scale Kanban, and for widen it up. And then we can also scale Kanban up. So on the higher level, for the higher level planning, like for example, if the teams are working on the user stories level, so we can scale for more teams with more user stories, but we can also scale up towards the feature management and workflow management of the higher work items. I don't know what we might be using, like features, epics, different tools have different names, but you know what I mean. Like this higher level of planning, of requirements management, and things like that.
Epics, capabilities,
Exactly.
portfolio epics,
Exactly.
and strategic themes. It's just everybody's got their own names, kind of thing.
Yeah. But I think that the most important thing when you're thinking about scaling at all is to ask yourself why you would like to scale. What issues are you trying to solve? Is it to improve collaboration? Is it to improve the knowledge sharing? Or maybe to reduce some dependencies and blockers, reduce the waiting time? Like, what is the goal? Because when you answer this question, it might be much easier to see which teams actually should or could be included in the scaling.
I love that. And that is a great segue into the next question, actually, because the next question is metrics and measurements in Kanban, right? So let me frame that question for us. Kanban emphasizes continuous improvement, but measuring progress can be tricky. So what Kanban metrics do you find the most valuable for tracking large-scale initiatives, and how do we use them to inform improvements?